This episode of Dispatches from Planet Albany is brought to you with support by New York State United Teachers, which represents more than 600,000 educators and school-related professionals in New York. Dispatches is also supported by the public affairs firm O'Donnell & Associates. For more information, check out o'donnellsolutions.com.
I've also declared war on potholes, so here's the first shot across the bow.
Well, as you know, with Planet Albany, there's always something that makes the planet turn.
And it's this amazing view of D.C., and Eddie Vedder comes out, and he goes, "You have a cigarette?" And I've never smoked in my life, but if I had, I wish that was the moment.
And this strategy takes us from potholes to knotholes.
I would like to say it was a pleasure, Mr. Kim. But I'm on the road.
I'm David Lombardo, and this is Dispatches from Planet Albany, a podcast about power and policy in state government. And on this episode, we're unpacking some of the lesser-known items tucked away into the governor's Article 7 budget bills, and to highlight some potentially underappreciated or less loved items at this point in the budget process. I'm joined in the studio by Dan Clark, author of the Capitol Confidential newsletter. Welcome back to the show, Dan.
Thank you very much. I think you meant to say the second most frequent guest on this show.
Well, that was the case for 2025, and you're off to a strong start in 2026. And, the way the ebbs and flow of a year might go, we'll have to see how this turns out. Yeah,
I think you're right, but I'm happy to be here anytime.
So I want to start just by asking you about your budget day. How was it? Was it any different than anything in the past? Did anything stand out to you on Tuesday?
It was safe. I think that's what stood out to me, is that there wasn't really anything in the governor's budget that you could foresee being a big problem with the legislature. Mm-hmm. Whereas last year she was pushing criminal justice changes that we knew were going to be a clash. She doesn't have anything in there that really sets them up for a fight. Now, last month in December or November, she had hinted that she wanted to try to renegotiate the Climate Act with the legislature. I had expected something like that to be in her budget if she wanted to do that, because if she's going to start those negotiations, she would have to finish them in the budget. There's no way that lawmakers would agree to do anything outside the budget on that.
So I want to weigh in, though, and say if I'm the governor and I do want to do something that would be a really heavy lift in Albany, because while there obviously are some Democrats, all the Republicans will be on board, but there are some Democrats who would say, yeah, let's revisit these goals, let's change the timelines. There are probably enough Democrats to make that very difficult. So if I'm Governor Kathy Hochul and I want to strengthen my position, I'm going to surprise people with this. This is my March 31st addition to budget negotiations. By the way, I want this. Don't give anybody a chance to really mount a real defense, because if you come out on January 20th and say, I want to do this, the halls would be filled with climate activists all the time, and they would build that defense and just be like, we've got XYZ lawmakers lined up, including the ones who might have been on the fence maybe.
That is a very good point, and there's there's court arguments next week on the All-Electric Buildings Act, the appeal on that.
Sure.
And at the end of March would be a not unreasonable time for a decision on that to come out. So it would give the governor a really great excuse to say, hey, we're in a bind because of the court, we need to renegotiate this, or, it's just not going to work.
Well, I appreciate you leaning into the policy and politics of the budget, but, and I don't mean to embarrass you, Dan, but my question was, how was your day? I was just curious. Did you have any issues getting the embargo? Did you sit through any press conferences? Was the technical briefing helpful? How was your day, Dan?
It was actually not great.
No?
It was not a good day.
How come?
I had left the Hall of Governors at one point, and they locked me out, and I couldn't get back in for like 10 minutes.
Do you think that was on purpose, or was that just bad luck?
It was a misunderstanding.
Okay.
So you had a situation where I was on one side of the door, and the rest of the LCA was on the other side of the door talking to people, but they wouldn't let me back in because they said it was a security threat.
And was there any ever explanation about that?
There wasn't, but I do have a sleeve of tattoos, so I understand the concern.
They're usually covered up, though.
They're usually covered up, but if people know they're there, they know that I'm a felon.
Well, we'll run right past that joke. And I want to talk lastly, before we get into our main topic today, about the P word that was used during the budget announcement, and we've heard a few other times from the governor and some of her surrogates, including the budget director. And that P word, obviously, is progressive, and it's how they've been describing the tax code. And to me, that seems like a very conscious choice and a way to sort of cut off these demands that we're hearing already from some progressives about the need to raise taxes. Does that sound like a new way for them to highlight the existing tax structure? Because I can't really think of a ton of past times where the governor has gone out of her way to say, yeah, we already have a progressive tax code. The people on the high end already pay a lot.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right on that, because as a lot of people know, there are some states that don't have an income tax at all. Of course, property taxes are higher in those states. In some areas, depends on if you live in Westchester County or not.
Sure.
But I think that it's a way to reframe it to say, hey, we're already doing what you're asking us to do. Mm-hmm. It's just not at the amount that you want us to do. And it's a way to set up the governor to say, I'm actually progressive. Antonio Delgado, forget about him. Look at me. Mm-hmm. I'm the person that you want as the nominee. Not that she's worried. I don't think that she's worried about the primary at all, but I think that she's playing it safe on that.
Yeah, I think it's a framing battle for the budget, which is why we also heard a new A word proactively deployed from the governor, which was the idea that this is not an austerity budget as they're going to be accused of, right?
Yeah. And I don't really know why she felt the need to say that, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. I kind of get it, because she is very right that it's not like they are cutting back.
Sure.
They're still spending more. Presumably, the governor has found about $300 million in savings in state agencies. No idea what they are. I have a good idea about what about 7 million of them are, $7 million. But we're also investing $1.7 billion more into childcare. So you can't really say that she's holding the line on spending. Especially, they're framing this in an interesting way, too. Last year's state budget agreement was $254 billion. They are framing this as an increase of 0.7%. The new budget is $260 billion. That math doesn't add up if you are quick at math. It's because they're now projecting all fund spending through the end of the fiscal year to be about $258 billion. Mm-hmm. So while it's $6 billion above last year's agreement, it's only about $1.7 billion above the money that we're going to end up spending by the end of the fiscal year.
And I want to also frame the idea of an austerity budget against what we saw in 2009, 2010, 2011, which were budgets where the governors had to really take a hard line in the sand. And I think for lawmakers now, many of whom were not around back then because there's been so much turnover, I think the context there would be very helpful to remind them of. But regardless, let's move on to the main reason we're here, and that's to give some love and attention to some budget items that maybe haven't gotten a lot of love and attention so far. And citing host prerogative, I'm going to go first. And these are two items that I think are kind of connected. One is the revenue side of things, which is that the state is planning on increasing the lobbying registration fees from $200 to $250 and require lobbyists to pay the registration fee in both years of the biennial registration period. This is going to raise $300,000, at least that's the estimate. And kind of going along with that, the bill is going to amend law to impose late fees of $25 per day on lobbyists and lobbyist clients who fail to timely comply with mandated ethics training. And this is one side of the coin. The other side, according to Reinvent Albany, they say that the state is planning on only giving $8.9 million for the Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government, down from $9.1 million, and that matters because Colig's the one responsible for policing those lobbyists who are now bringing more money in from, and they actually asked for $9.1 million for operating expenses, an additional $750,000 for tech upgrades. So it makes my head want to bloat. And it also reminds me of the revenue we bring in from tobacco products and how so much of it is siphoned off away from tobacco cessation efforts and goes just dumped into the general fund. And that's a plug for Blair Horner's hobby horse. But I just love this from the perspective of it's so Albany a thing to do, but from a good government stance, it seems problematic.
I just don't really understand it. It's only $200,000. And I mean, what's among friends? $200,000.
Sure.
But I mean, in the scope of the greater budget, in a budget where the state operating funds just by themselves are, I think, about $157 billion, they really couldn't find that $200,000 to put into the state ethics commission that they created because Hochul became governor after Andrew Cuomo was pushed out, so to say, as he would say.
Yeah. Forced to resign.
Right. So I guess I just don't get it. Like, I guess somebody could argue and maybe look at Colig's finances. Maybe they didn't use all $9.1 million.
Maybe they need to find efficiencies.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I wonder, too, does the legislature go to bat for this? It's not like Colig has got a ton of great allies in the Democratic majorities. Are they going to be like, yep, I fought for and won $200,000 extra dollars for Colig. That's my reelection campaign.
No. There are so many government transparency things that the legislature could do.
Yeah.
I don't think that they're going to die on that hill.
Some challenges need someone who simply won't quit. Modern advocacy brings tenacity, strategy, and unwavering follow-through to every client it serves. Learn more at modernadvocacyllc.com.
Well, I think that there's some interesting healthcare proposals in the governor's budget that haven't really been highlighted. One that I wrote about this week, it would require healthcare entities when they have a transaction. So if I'm a hospital system that buys a smaller hospital, or if I'm two hospital systems that merge, or two hospitals that merge, they have to give notice to the state right now. But the governor is proposing to require them to give more notice of that, give them more information on what that would look like, and then they have to monitor that over the next couple of years to see how it impacted cost, access to care, health equity, and really importantly, they have to monitor how it affects competition. There's this growing trend in New York of something called hospital consolidation, where you have hospital chains buying up smaller hospitals and healthcare networks. Now, that doesn't sound like a bad thing, and it may not necessarily be a bad thing, but it gives those hospital networks a lot of leverage when they're negotiating insurance rates with insurers. It gives them the power to say, we're going to be out of network if you don't give us these rates. So with more eyes on hospital consolidation, I think the state is maybe looking at this proposal to say, we've got our eyes on you. We want a little bit more oversight of this process, and any more information that you can give us would be helpful in that regard.
That sounds like the type of thing the legislature has been kicking around lately, because they have either been debating how do we stop these mergers, or at the very least, how do we get, as you pointed out, more disclosure about it. I mean, is it fair to say the governor is picking up and running with a legislative idea, or does this, at least from your initial reading, seem like it's kind of born out of her own ideas?
It's kind of like a very, very, very watered down version of a bill from Gustavo Rivera, the health chair in the Senate. He has this bill that was introduced after St. Peter's tried to close a maternity clinic around the Albany area. That bill, not to get into the details of it too much, but it would require hospital systems to gather public input when they close certain departments. It would require them to go slower in that process, and it would require them to work with the Department of Health to mitigate the impact of that on the community. Now, this isn't necessarily the same thing. These are different things, material transactions. That's when somebody acquires something. But it's the same concept of saying we want to monitor what the impact of these decisions are on these communities. Because at the end of the day, if you have communities that are served just by an emergency room, maybe for an hour radius, like where I come from, there's just an emergency room. The costs become very high because you don't have access to preventive care. You don't have access to, procedures that you might get inpatient at a hospital or outpatient at a hospital. So I think that it's a good way to say, what you're doing needs more thought to it, possibly. And if we can monitor it and make sure that it's not having a negative impact, that's going to be better for everybody.
Have you heard any opposition to this yet from the hospitals? And if not, do you anticipate the healthcare industry is going to potentially work behind the scenes to, terminally end this?
I haven't heard them say anything. That being said, I have about 500 unread statements on the governor's executive budget in my inbox somewhere. So they very well may have already. But this is the sort of proposal that they would be hesitant to support because it's another regulatory burden, right? It gives their administration, their administrative staff more to do. And obviously, for anybody who has had to deal with hospital billing departments, they're already, behind on things. And, I'm not saying that they're doing bad things or anything like that, but they also don't love more oversight from the state. I mean, we have the safe staffing law that was passed a few years ago. The state monitors that at hospitals and issues reports and publishes notices on where that's being violated, and hospitals don't love that because it calls them out. So I think anything that is going to add more to their plate, they're not going to like. That being said, I don't know. I could be wrong.
Crazier things have happened. All right. I'm going to pivot to one that before New York Focus reported on it, at least from the point of view of how campaign contributions may have influenced this item in the budget, I think it was kind of underplayed. And this is a $150 million addition to the New York City musical and theatrical tax credit. And my favorite part about this is that it has a retroactive element to it. This is going to be accessible to theatrical and musical productions whose initial performances were on or after December 1st, 2025. So this is going to apply to things that potentially, if this budget is adopted April 1, began 4 months ago. So this isn't about bringing like new things here. This is basically the idea that, and this is from reading some of the trades, that there were productions in the fall that maybe had concerns about the lack of money that was going to be in this fund, and that might have influenced what was going to open. But at the same time, this is not necessarily gone to mom and pop struggling productions. I think these are pretty well known, given the fact that I don't know what's going on in Broadway culture, and we're talking about The Lion King, The Book of Mormon.
We got to keep Wicked on Broadway, man.
Yeah. Is there reason to think that they are not going to keep doing this? And I understand the argument. I might not agree with it about like something like the film tax credit. You could film or shoot something anywhere. Anything could theoretically be dolled up to look like New York City. But these productions are coming to Broadway in part because the infrastructure is here and the people are here. So it's not like Boise can just set up shop as the new center for theater if they offer a tax credit, because it just doesn't work like that. And then the other side of the story is the fact that, as New York Focus reports, in October, quote, Hochul raked in more than $243,000 in campaign donations from at least 27 Broadway producers, actors, theater executives, or lobbyists. And that was, I think, coinciding with some actions that Empire State Development was taking. And now they've done this language here. I'm not shocked.
No.
Right?
I mean, I don't think that the productions are in danger of going anywhere. I think the thought behind it is probably that they're just going to close.
Sure.
Theaters on Broadway in particular have never returned to pre-pandemic audience levels.
And that was what this is born out of. This is born out of the pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. So I could see them needing support, but at some point we have to ask ourselves if the business model is working and how to transition to a new business model. I would also like to see Phantom of the Opera on Broadway. I think it actually closed, so I guess you can't. It might have. I don't know. I'm sorry for any gays listening, whatever.
I was just going to assume Phantom is something that is perennially on Broadway, but I could be wrong.
I could be wrong, too. There are certain shows that make a lot of money right now, but a lot of productions, and listen, I'm getting into Broadway culture right now. A lot of productions have taken to attracting celebrity names to be in them, to draw an audience. celebrities don't work for the same amount of money as, Cynthia Erivo did when she was just starting on Broadway. So you have to drive up the ticket prices because of that, because you're paying, Daniel Craig $2 million to be there. And then nobody wants to go to the show because tickets are $500. It's like a negative feedback loop on itself. You can't really stop one of the things without it all falling apart.
Yeah, and I understand the idea that, well, this is going to shrink the size of the number of productions if they don't have this credit because they are so expensive to put on, and people are only going to take those surefire bets like Wicked. But Wicked's already getting the money. So This isn't like it's supporting some version of Death of a Salesman that has, some new LGBTQ storyline to it, and it might struggle, to get off the ground. I don't know.
Listen, touring productions are alive and well.
Sure.
Everybody should go to their local theaters and see them. Not to get too deep into it, but as soon as we started uploading videos on the internet, theater was dead. Now we have live theater productions on television that people watch instead of going to Broadway. These are things that maybe the industry could combat.
Well, I will say I am now becoming a New York City theater guy, having gone to see Oh Mary in 2025.
Who was in it when you saw it?
Jinx Monsoon.
Shut up.
Yep, with Kumail Nanjiani.
Oh my goodness.
It was a good time.
I bet that was the best.
We enjoyed ourselves, and now this spring, my wife and I with my parents are going to go see Dog Day Afternoon with John Bernthal and, I'm probably butchering this, but Eben Moss-Bacharach, who's known as Richie from The Bear and The Thing from Fantastic Four. So I'm looking forward to that.
That sounds very nice.
Yeah, that should be fun. And I think the Hochul administration would want me to say that, quote, campaign donations have no impact on government decisions, end quote. One other angle to this, though, because we've seen with the film tax credit that eventually they expanded that concentrated way outside of New York City. I wonder how long it's going to be before this is the state tax credit for theater, and we're going to see this, burgeoning productions outside of New York City. It's like, hello, Greene County, we've brought a production here, and we're going to have to keep floating this more and more and more. Wonder if people will want that.
I would love that.
Yeah. All right, Dan, do you have anything else you'd like to highlight?
Well, I do, and it's kind of in the weeds, I'll be honest with you.
Get in there. I brought a machete.
In 2002, 2003, George Pataki issued an executive order, and it later became a law. It prohibits entities that are going to bid on a state contract. Okay. So these are people trying to do business with the state. Prohibits them from communicating with state agency officials during the restricted period. That is during the period where the bids are open. So the agency has said, hey, submit your bids to us, and then it ends when they choose whoever it is. So it's currently only required for contracts of more than $15,000. Most contracts are, not that small, but Hochul wants to raise that threshold to $50,000. Now, it's not a huge difference. Most state contracts are going to be way more than $50,000. But I would be interested to hear the reason behind it and why. It seems like maybe there shouldn't be any communication during the restricted period. But I'm not a good government official, so I can't really say that. And related to this, there's another one, another proposal in the governor's budget that I found interesting. Candidates for, elected officials have to file a financial disclosure form every year, basically saying, I make this money and I own a building where I rent out to people. I don't know why so many of them own real estate that they rent out to people, but they do.
Passive income's great, Dan.
Yeah, it would be great if I could afford it.
You're not in the passive income game?
I'm actually all about affordability. So that's me.
I'm a renter in the sense that 4 weekends a year I put my house on Airbnb in Saratoga Springs.
That's great.
And so if listeners out there are willing to pay a premium for the host of Dispatches from Planet Albany's house for a weekend, we can make that work if people are interested in that.
100%. So she wants to update the form. I haven't gone through it to see exactly what the changes are that she wants to make. But there are certain reporting thresholds that I noticed did increase. Like one is you have to report on the current form when you receive a gift of more than $1,000. She wants to raise that to $2,000. So there's just little changes in that make me wonder, who brought that up? Who suggested that? Why is that coming into place? And if the answer to all of these things is they haven't been changed in 25 years because of inflation, it doesn't make sense anymore, perfectly fine.
Sure.
But as you and I both know, sometimes there is more than meets the eye.
So before I let you go, I'll hold up the Association of School Business Officials of New York's mouse pad that has a legislative calendar on it. And you mentioned earlier that you feel like this is not a very controversial budget. So given that backdrop, Dan, what is your prediction on when the budget is going to be adopted? And the joke answer, as one lawmaker said to me, when they pass all the bills. But okay. When do you think that will actually be?
I'm going to say May 2nd in the morning.
So that is a Saturday and a month after the budget is due.
Yeah.
And in light of you saying this was not a controversial budget, why the extra month?
Because not all of them have been, I don't know, they just don't have a great track record on being on time with this governor. The negotiations take longer.
Okay.
I don't know and to what you said earlier, she loves to bring stuff up at the very last minute. And we don't know what that's going to be. It could be something where they are so close to a budget deal. And then she's like, by the way, I want to open up the Climate Act right now. And I'm not going to agree to the budget until you do something with me. That's a month. Discovery this past year was a month.
Or we need the new Sean McDermott Memorial Fund. Do you know who he is?
He was just fired.
Yes.
He was the coach of the Buffalo Bills.
And on that note, we've been speaking with Dan Clark. He's the author of the Capital Confidential newsletter and the aspiring sports correspondent for Dispatches. Dan, thank you so much for making the time, and I hope you have a better budget day in 2027.
Go Bills.